You think you're leaving with dignity? He snapped, pen shaking. Sign it. You were never anything without me anyway. Before we dive into this story, I need to know something. Have you ever watched someone walk away, convinced they'd won, only to realize too late they'd lost everything? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you've ever believed love was worth fighting for, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this ends. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. Daniel Reed loved mornings when the city felt beneath him. Every weekday at 6:15 a.m., he stood on the balcony of their downtown Chicago condo, espresso in hand, watching traffic crawl below like something manageable, something small. From 30 floors up, even chaos looked orderly. Inside, Naomi moved quietly. She always did. She padded across the hardwood floors in socks, hair tied back, wearing one of his old college hoodies. The smell of toast drifted through the kitchen. No music, no TV, just calm. Daniel used to think that was one of the things he loved about her. Used to. You've got that meeting with the board today, right? Naomi asked gently, setting a plate down. Daniel replied, eyes still on his phone. Big one. She nodded. You'll do great. There was no sarcasm in her voice, no doubt, and somehow that irritated him. Naomi never asked about numbers, never pushed opinions, never needed credit. First, Daniel found it refreshing. After a few years, embarrassing. When colleagues asked what she did, Daniel would shrug. Naomi? Oh, she's low-key. Low-key became invisible. Their marriage hadn't exploded. It eroded. Slow dinners eaten separately. Texts that said running late more than I miss you. Conversations that stayed on the surface because going deeper felt inconvenient. Daniel told himself this was normal. Successful marriages evolved, simplified. But Naomi felt the distance like a cold draft she couldn't shut out. One night, standing in the CVS checkout line at 9:47 p.m., holding a bottle of melatonin and a greeting card she didn't need, Naomi stared at her reflection in the security mirror and wondered when she'd started feeling like a guest in her own life. Daniel didn't notice she was gone until midnight. The first real crack came on a Thursday. Daniel hosted a networking dinner at an upscale steakhouse near the river. Candlelight, valet parking, the kind of place where menus didn't list prices. Naomi sat beside him, smiling politely, answering questions about travel and hobbies. So what do you do? A woman across the table asked, swirling her wine. Naomi opened her mouth. She doesn't... Daniel cut in, laughing. She's more into simple living. The table chuckled. Naomi's smile didn't falter, but something inside her went still. Later, in the car, she said quietly, You didn't have to answer for me. Daniel sighed. I was helping you. No, she said. You were dismissing me. He scoffed. You're reading too much into it. That was the first night Naomi slept facing the window. Daniel didn't notice. Weeks later, the word divorce slipped out during an argument about nothing. Actually, it was about dishes. But it wasn't. You don't contribute, Daniel said, louder than he meant. You don't understand pressure. Naomi stared at him. I understand loneliness. Silence followed. Heavy. Final. Daniel felt something rise in his chest. Fear. Maybe, but he crushed it with certainty. Maybe we both made a mistake, he said. Naomi didn't cry. She nodded. Once. Okay. That scared him more than tears would have. The papers were drawn up fast. Daniel hired the best firm money could buy. He was efficient, clean, proud of how civil he was being. Naomi didn't argue over assets, didn't demand alimony, didn't even ask for the condo. She just wanted her clothes, her books, her grandmother's ring. Daniel mistook her calm for defeat. You're walking away from a comfortable life, he said one afternoon, as if warning her. Naomi met his eyes. I know. What she didn't say. Comfort isn't the same as belonging. On the day he signed the divorce papers, Daniel felt light, free. He sat in the glass-walled conference room overlooking the city, pen poised, attorney nodding. Across the table, Naomi looked smaller than he remembered. Simple dress. No jewelry. He smirked. This would be clean. Final. His terms. He didn't know that across town, in a quiet office with no name on the door, a man with silver hair and patient eyes was reviewing documents of his own. Documents that carried Daniel Reed's company logo on every page. Daniel didn't know that Naomi's father hadn't missed a single detail of her pain, and he certainly didn't know that the world he was standing on had already begun to shift beneath his feet. As Daniel lowered the pen to sign, convinced this chapter ended in his favor, the real story was just beginning. Daniel believed power was loud, visible, undeniable. He had no idea the quietest person in the room was about to take everything he thought he owned. The pen felt heavier than Daniel expected. Shouldn't have. He'd signed contracts worth millions without blinking. But this was different. Final in a way numbers never were. Whenever you're ready, the attorney said. Daniel glanced across the table. Naomi sat straight, hands folded in her lap. Calm, almost distant. The woman he once knew would have been nervous, chewing her lip, eyes glossy. This version looked resolved. That unsettled him. He signed anyway. The pen scratched the paper. One page, then another. Marriage dissolved in black ink. When he slid the folder back, Daniel leaned into his chair. That's it, then. Naomi nodded. That's it. No drama. No begging. No last plea. He felt a flash of something sharp. Regret? No. Relief, he told himself. Outside, Chicago traffic hummed. Life moved on. 3 days later, Daniel walked into his office expecting routine. Instead, his assistant stood frozen at her desk. Morning, Daniel said. What's with the look? There's someone here to see you. I don't have. He didn't have an appointment, she said. But he owns the building. Daniel frowned. That's not possible. The man stepped out from the conference room. Tall, silver hair, calm eyes that missed nothing. Daniel Reed, the man said. I'm Thomas Hale. Daniel's stomach dipped. He knew the name. Everyone in finance did. Old money, quiet power, the kind that didn't chase headlines. Mr. Hale, Daniel said quickly, forcing a smile. To what do I owe? I recently acquired a controlling interest in your company, Thomas said. The words landed softly, but they shattered everything. That's not funny, Daniel said, laugh brittle. My company isn't for sale. Thomas tilted his head. It was. Last quarter. Through a holding group. Daniel's mouth went dry. That's impossible, he said again, weaker this time. Thomas slid a folder onto the desk. Inside were documents Daniel had skimmed months ago. Minority stakes, silent partners, paperwork he'd signed between flights. His name was there. So was Thomas Hale's. You sold more than you realized, Thomas said. Happens often. Daniel's chest tightened. Why are you here? Thomas met his gaze. To meet the man who hurt my daughter. The room seemed to tilt. Your daughter, Daniel echoed. Thomas didn't raise his voice. Didn't need to. Naomi, he said. Silence swallowed the room. Daniel's mind raced, searching for a joke, a misunderstanding, anything. That's not possible, he whispered. She told me her father was retired. Modest. She chose a quiet life, Thomas said. I respected that. Daniel's knees weakened. He sat. All those years. The dinners she skipped. The old sedan. The simple clothes. It wasn't lack. It was choice. You're here to humiliate me, Daniel said. Thomas shook his head. No. I'm here to observe. Observe what? What kind of man signs divorce papers thinking he's above consequences? Daniel clenched his jaw. I didn't know. That's rarely an excuse, Thomas replied. Just a confession. He turned to leave. At the door he paused. For what it's worth, I would have given you everything. If you'd valued her. Then he was gone. Daniel sat alone for a long time. The city outside looked different now. Louder, closer, less forgiving. He thought of Naomi's calm, her silence, her restraint. For the first time, doubt cracked his certainty. And if you're listening to this, feeling that twist in your chest, wondering how many times pride costs someone the truth, maybe staying here, hearing this through, is how we remind ourselves not to make the same mistake. That night, Daniel drove past Naomi's old neighborhood. Small houses, porch lights, kids riding bikes too late. He wondered how many times she'd chosen him over comfort. How many times she'd swallowed words to protect his ego. He pulled over, put his head on the steering wheel, and finally understood. He hadn't lost her because she lacked value. He lost her because he never learned how to see it. Across town, Naomi sat at a quiet kitchen table, phone face down. She knew her father had stepped in. She hadn't asked him to, but part of her hoped Daniel would feel it now, the weight of what he'd dismissed. Not for revenge, for truth. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "We need to talk." She stared at the screen, heart steady, past unmoving, future uncertain. She didn't reply. Not yet. Daniel thought the divorce ended his story. But as power shifted and truth surfaced, one question hung heavy. When the masks fall, will regret arrive too late to matter? Daniel didn't sleep that night. He lay in his condo, staring at the ceiling, the city's glow bleeding through the blinds. Every sound felt louder than it should have been. The hum of traffic, the click of the heater, his own breathing. Naomi's father. The words kept circling. He tried to logic his way out of it. People lied. Stories got exaggerated. Maybe the man was bluffing. Maybe it was some elaborate power play. By morning, denial felt easier than truth. At work, Daniel acted normal. He walked the halls with the same posture, spoke in meetings with the same confidence, laughed at the right moments. But something had changed. People hesitated before answering him now. Conversations stopped when he entered rooms. His name still carried weight, but not control. At lunch, he overheard whispers. New ownerships watching everything. Boards nervous. Reed's not untouchable anymore. Daniel clenched his jaw. He told himself it didn't matter. He still had his title, his salary, his reputation. But titles feel different when they're borrowed. That evening, he met his friend Kyle at a sports bar off Michigan Avenue. TVs blared a college game. Beer glasses clinked. Life carried on like nothing had happened. Kyle listened as Daniel spoke about work, stress, transitions. He left Naomi out. "You ever think about calling her?" Kyle asked. Daniel scoffed. "Why? We're done." Kyle studied him. "You sound like you're trying to convince yourself." Daniel took a long drink. "She moved on." Kyle shrugged. "Maybe. Or maybe she just stopped waiting." That landed harder than Daniel expected. Across the city, Naomi was building a routine that didn't include him. She rented a small apartment near a park. Second floor. Sunlight in the mornings. Quiet at night. She volunteered at a local community center twice a week. Helped kids with reading. Shared snacks. Laughed easily. No one there knew her last name. No one treated her like she needed to be smaller. At night, she cooked simple meals and played old music her mother loved. Songs that felt like home. She wasn't pretending she wasn't hurt. She was just done bleeding in public. Daniel tried to move on. He updated his dating profile. Went on a few dinners. Smiled when expected. But every conversation felt shallow. Every laugh forced. One woman asked what his ex-wife was like. "Quiet," he said automatically, then paused. "No," he corrected himself. "Strong." The woman raised an eyebrow. "Which one is it?" Daniel didn't answer. Weeks passed. Work tightened. Meetings grew colder. Decisions went over his head. He still hadn't replied to Thomas Hale's follow-up email. Still hadn't called Naomi. He told himself that reaching out would look weak. Pride made the rules now. One afternoon, Daniel drove past the old diner Naomi used to love. He didn't stop, but he slowed down. He remembered her smile there, how she'd tipped too much, how she knew the waitress by name. He remembered thinking she was naive. The memory stung. Naomi felt his absence differently, not as pain, as space. She no longer checked her phone before bed. No longer wondered if she'd said too much or too little. One night, she found herself laughing, real laughter, during a movie with friends. Startled her. Healing had arrived quietly. Daniel's denial began to crack the day he lost his office. No warning. No ceremony. Just a new keycard and a smaller room. He stood there, box in hand, staring at walls that didn't echo his voice the way they used to. That night, he finally typed Naomi's name into his phone. The message sat unsent. I didn't know. He erased it. Can we talk? Gone. What he meant felt heavier than words. He drove instead, past her old place, then the new address he'd memorized but never used. He parked across the street. Lights on. Curtains open. A life continuing without him. He stayed in the car, hands tight on the wheel. Then he left. Naomi sensed something shifting. Not danger. Change. She felt it in the quiet moments, in the way old memories no longer hurt the same way. She knew Daniel would reach out eventually. She just didn't know if she'd be ready when he did. Denial can delay the truth, but it can't stop it. And as Daniel's world narrowed and Naomi's expanded, one thing became clear. When pride runs out of room, something has to break next. The first message came on a Tuesday. Naomi was at the community center, wiping marker off a table, when her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, expecting a reminder or a group chat joke. Daniel's name stopped her. She didn't open it right away. She finished cleaning, put the markers away, walked outside where the air smelled like rain and hot pavement. Only then did she read it. We need to talk. There's something you should know. Her chest tightened, not with fear, but with recognition. This was the moment she'd sensed coming. She typed nothing back. The second message came 2 days later. I'm not asking for forgiveness, just a conversation. That one sat longer with her. Naomi stared at the trees lining the street, leaves just starting to turn. She thought about the last conversation they'd had. The clipped voices, the sharp edges, the way he'd signed papers without looking up. She finally replied. Saturday, public place. He answered almost instantly. Thank you. Saturday morning arrived with gray skies and the threat of rain. They chose a coffee shop near the river neutral ground. The kind with mismatched chairs and soft music. A place where people lingered but didn't listen. Naomi arrived early. She ordered tea, sat near the window, watched joggers pass by with earbuds in, lost in their own worlds. When Daniel walked in, she barely recognized him. He looked thinner, less polished. His suit was gone, replaced by a simple jacket and jeans. He hesitated when he saw her, like he wasn't sure he was allowed to approach. She didn't wave, but she didn't leave. They sat across from each other. For a full minute, neither spoke. The silence wasn't awkward. It was heavy, honest. Daniel broke first. You look good. Naomi nodded. You don't. A small, sad smile crossed his face. Fair. Another pause. I didn't know, he said finally. About your father. About any of it. I know, Naomi replied. That was the point. He looked down at his hands. Your dad bought the company. Quietly. Overnight. I know. I thought he was lying to scare me. She met his eyes. Why would he need to scare you? Daniel swallowed. He didn't answer. The barista called out an order. Cups clinked. Life moved around them. I spent years thinking I was carrying you, Daniel said. Turns out I was standing on a floor I didn't build. Naomi didn't flinch. And I spent years shrinking so you wouldn't feel that. That landed. Daniel's shoulders dropped. Just slightly, like armor loosening. I didn't see you, he said. Not really. I know, she said again. That's why I left. Rain began to tap the window. Daniel leaned back, staring at the ceiling like it might give him answers. Your dad didn't do this to punish me. No, Naomi said. He did it to protect me. The words hung between them. From me, Daniel whispered. She didn't correct him. They talked for an hour. Not about money, not about power, about missed dinners, about the way Daniel used work to avoid feeling small, about the way Naomi learned to be quiet to keep the peace. At one point, neither spoke for a long stretch. Just listened to the rain. Just breathed. When they stood to leave, Daniel stopped her near the door. "I'm not asking for another chance," he said. "I just needed you to know. I see it now." Naomi studied him. For the first time in a long while, his words didn't feel like a performance. "I believe you," she said. "That doesn't mean things go back." "I know," he replied. "I just didn't want to disappear without saying it." She nodded. That mattered more than she expected. Outside, the rain had slowed to a mist. They stood under the awning, not touching. Daniel took a step back, gave her space, respect finally. As Naomi walked away, she felt something unfamiliar. Not closure, possibility. That night, Daniel sat alone in his smaller apartment, replaying every word, not with regret but with clarity. Across the city, Naomi lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, realizing her heart hadn't raced during the meeting. It had steadied. They'd been forced into the same space and something cracked open. Not love, not forgiveness, but truth. And once truth is spoken, it demands a response neither of them can avoid in what comes next. The call came 3 days after the charity event. Naomi was in the grocery store, standing in the cereal aisle, comparing prices she didn't need to worry about but still did out of habit. Her phone buzzed. She expected her father, or a reminder. Instead, it was Daniel. She stared at his name longer than necessary. Then she answered. "Hey, hey," he said. His voice sounded different, tight, careful. "I know this isn't a good time, but I need to tell you something, and I didn't want to text it." Naomi pushed her cart aside and stepped toward the end of the aisle, near the freezers where the air hummed low and cold. "Okay." There was a pause on the line, long enough for her to hear her own breathing. "I found something," Daniel said, "about the night you left." Her grip tightened on the phone. "Found what?" "My emails. Old backups. I was clearing things out." He swallowed. "There were messages you sent. I never opened them." Naomi closed her eyes. They met that evening at a park near the river. The sun was dropping low, painting the water orange and gray. Joggers passed. A couple argued quietly near a bench. Somewhere a dog barked. Normal life. Heavy moment. Daniel held his phone like it weighed too much. "I didn't read them then," he said. "I was angry. I thought if I ignored them, the problem would disappear." Naomi folded her arms. Not defensive, just steady. "I sent 3. "I know," he said. "I read them last night." She waited. The first email, she explained, was short, just asking him to come home early, to talk. The second was longer, about how lonely she felt, how small she'd become. The third, she said quietly, "was me telling you I was pregnant again." Daniel's head snapped up. "Again?" She nodded. "I lost it 2 weeks before I left. The river kept moving. I didn't tell you because you were already gone," she continued. "Not physically, just not there." Daniel sat heavily on the bench. "I never knew," he said. "I know." His hands shook. He shoved them between his knees. "I thought you left because you didn't believe in me." Naomi's voice cracked, just once. "I left because I stopped believing in myself." They sat in silence. No words rushed in to fix it. Cars passed on the bridge above them. Someone's phone rang nearby and went unanswered. Daniel finally spoke. "I built my whole life on not needing anyone, on proving I was enough, and I didn't realize the cost." Naomi looked out at the water. "I kept thinking if I just loved you better, you'd see me." "I do see you now," he said. She turned. "That doesn't undo what happened." "I know," he replied, "but it changes what I do next." He told her about the therapy, the sessions he'd started after the divorce papers were signed. About the first night he sat in his apartment and realized silence wasn't peace. It was absence. Naomi listened, not skeptical, not convinced, just present. "I don't want to be the man who learns too late," Daniel said. Even if I don't get another chance with you. That landed harder than anything else he'd said. They walked along the river as dusk settled in. At one point, Naomi stopped and faced him. There's something you need to understand. Okay. My father didn't buy your company to control you. He did it because he watched me disappear. And he promised himself he'd never let that happen again. Daniel nodded slowly. I believe that. Good, she said. Because this, she gestured between them, can't be about power or rescue. It won't be, he said. If it is, stop me. She held his gaze. I will. A memory surfaced then, uninvited. Naomi at 26, sitting on the edge of a hospital bed. White walls, beeping machines. Daniel pacing, phone pressed to his ear, voice low and urgent. Not once looking at her. She swallowed. Daniel noticed. What is it? She shook her head. Just remembering. He didn't press. That restraint felt new. They reached the end of the path where the lights thinned and shadows stretched longer. Daniel stopped. I need to say this clearly. She nodded. I'm sorry, he said. No excuses. No add-ons. For the emails. For the nights you cried alone. For making you feel like love was something you had to earn. Naomi's eyes burned. She blinked hard. I forgive you, she said. That doesn't mean I forget. I wouldn't ask you to. Another silence. This one different. Softer. Over the next weeks, the unraveling continued. They didn't rush. They met for coffee. Took walks. Sat across from each other at diners. Sharing fries and memories they'd avoided before. Sometimes it was easy. Sometimes it hurt. One night, sitting in Daniel's car outside her apartment, Naomi said, I used to rehearse conversations with you in my head. Things I never said. Daniel stared at the steering wheel. I used to rehearse arguments. Things I thought I'd need to defend. They laughed quietly. Not because it was funny, but because it was true. The past kept surfacing. A missed birthday. A canceled vacation. A night Naomi waited up. Dinner cold. Phone silent. Daniel listened. Didn't interrupt. Didn't explain. Just listened. That alone unraveled something deep. One evening, rain started suddenly as they walked to their cars. They stood under the awning of a closed bookstore, close enough to feel each other's breath. This would have been the part where I kissed you, Daniel said softly. Naomi smiled. And I would have let you. He didn't move. That restraint mattered more than the kiss would have. Later that night, Naomi sat alone in her apartment, thinking about forgiveness, about patterns, about how easy it would be to fall back into something familiar. Across town, Daniel lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if love could grow back differently, slower, stronger. Neither slept much. A week later, Naomi's father called. Dinner, he said. Just us. They sat in his kitchen, simple and warm. He listened as she spoke. Didn't interrupt. When she finished, he said, Whatever you choose it because it's right for you. Not because you're afraid of being alone. She nodded. I know. Good, he said. Because you never are. The unraveling wasn't loud. It was quiet, persistent. Layer by layer, truth replaced assumption. Listening replaced pride. And still, nothing was promised. One evening, as they parted outside her building, Daniel hesitated. There's something I haven't told you, he said. Naomi's stomach tightened. What? He took a breath. There's a clause in the company acquisition. One I didn't know about until last week. She waited. If I remarry you, he said carefully, I lose my executive position. The words hit like cold water. Naomi stared at him. Why didn't you say this sooner? Because I didn't want it to matter, he said. And because I didn't know how to say it without sounding like I was bargaining. Her heart pounded. This changes things, she said. I know, he replied. They stood there, the night pressing in. The truth had finally surfaced, raw, unfiltered, and costly. And now, with everything laid bare, they stood at the edge of a choice that would demand more than love. It would demand sacrifice. The news didn't spread fast. It sank. Daniel didn't tell anyone right away. Not the board. Not his colleagues. Not even his therapist. He told Naomi. And after that night, everything felt different. The following week moved in slow motion. Daniel showed up to work, nodded through meetings, signed documents without reading them twice. The building felt colder. The office that once felt like proof of his worth now felt like a borrowed space. Every time his phone buzzed, his chest tightened. Naomi didn't call. She didn't text. That silence was louder than any argument they'd ever had. Naomi spent those days walking. Around her neighborhood. Through parks. Past schools letting out. Kids spilling onto sidewalks with backpacks bouncing and parents calling after them. She watched a mother kneel to tie a shoelace. Watched a father lift a sleepy child into a car. 7 years ago, that had been her. 7 years ago, she'd been standing in a hospital hallway with a newborn carrier in her hand, watching Daniel argue with a client on his phone. His voice sharp, distracted. She swallowed hard and kept walking. They finally spoke on a Thursday evening. Daniel asked if they could meet. Naomi said yes. They chose a quiet diner just off the highway. Vinyl booths. Coffee that tasted like it had been sitting too long. A place where nobody cared who you were. They sat across from each other. No small talk. "I've been thinking," Naomi said. Daniel nodded. "Me too." She folded her hands together. "I can't be the reason you lose everything you worked for." He leaned forward. "You're not." "I would be," she replied gently. "Whether you say it or not." He opened his mouth. Closed it. "That clause," she continued. "It's not just a legal thing. It's a test." "A test of what?" he asked. "Of who you are when something costs you," she said. Daniel looked down at the table. The scratches in the surface formed a map of old use. Old weight. "I already know my answer," he said quietly. Naomi's heart skipped. "Daniel." "I'd walk away," he said. "From the title. From the office. If it meant choosing you." The words landed heavy. She didn't feel relief. She felt fear. "Don't say that," Naomi said. "Not like it's easy." "It's not easy," he replied. "It's clear." "That scares me," she admitted. "Why?" "Because last time clarity came too late." He nodded, took that in. "I don't want to be saved," Naomi said. "And I don't want you to prove anything." "I'm not," Daniel said. "I'm choosing." She shook her head slowly. "I don't know if I can trust that choice yet." That was the breaking sound. Not loud. Final. They left the diner without touching. Outside, the parking lot lights buzzed overhead. A truck rumbled past on the road. Daniel watched Naomi walk to her car. He didn't follow. That night, rain poured hard and fast. Daniel sat on his couch, jacket still on, staring at the dark window. The city blurred beyond the glass. He thought about the first day he'd stepped into that company. The rush, the hunger, the way success felt like oxygen. He thought about Naomi sitting across from him at the diner, eyes steady, voice calm, asking him not to burn his life down for her. For the first time, he wondered if letting go might cost him more than walking away. Naomi lay awake, listening to the rain hit her window. She replayed his words. "I'd walk away." Part of her wanted to believe that was love. Another part remembered what it felt like to be loved loudly and alone. Her phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. "I'm sorry if I pushed. I just didn't want to lie." She stared at the screen, then typed back, "I know, nothing else." The next morning, Daniel was called into a meeting. No warning, just a calendar invite marked urgent. 3 board members sat across from him. Serious faces. Legal documents neatly stacked. They'd heard rumors. They wanted clarity. Daniel listened, answered honestly. When they asked about the clause, he didn't dodge. "I won't make personal decisions based on threats," he said. "But I also won't pretend my values stop at the office door." The room went quiet. One of the board members sighed. "If you choose differently, there will be consequences." Daniel nodded. "I understand." Naomi found out about the meeting from her father. "He didn't have to be that open," her father said. "But he was." That night, she sat on her balcony, wrapped in a sweater, the city glowing below. She thought about strength, about sacrifice, about how easy it was to confuse dramatic gestures with lasting change. 3 days passed. No calls, no texts, just distance. Then came the email. From Daniel. Short, "I'm stepping down." Naomi's heart dropped. She read it twice. Then she called him. He answered on the second ring. "I didn't do it for you," he said immediately. "I did it because I couldn't keep pretending the cost didn't matter." Her throat tightened. "Daniel, I don't expect anything," he continued. "I just needed you to know." Silence filled the line. "I'm scared," Naomi admitted, "of losing you again, of trusting something that once broke me." "I know," he said, "and I won't chase you into a yes." She closed her eyes. "I need time," she said. "Take it," he replied. "I'll be here." That night, Naomi dreamed of the hospital, the smell of antiseptic, the hum of machines. But this time, when she turned, Daniel wasn't on his phone. He was holding the baby, looking at her. She woke with tears on her cheeks. Across town, Daniel lay awake too, staring at the ceiling of an apartment that no longer felt temporary. Both of them stood on opposite sides of the same fear, and neither knew if love would be enough to cross it. Everything they'd uncovered led them here, where love demanded a price neither could pay lightly. And as the distance between them grew quiet and real, one question remained unanswered. Was choosing each other worth losing everything else? The mornings felt different after Daniel stepped down. Not quieter, not calmer, just honest. He woke before the alarm now. No rush to beat traffic. No suit waiting on the chair. The apartment still smelled like last night's coffee, a little burnt, a little stale. He stood at the window and watched the city wake up. Delivery trucks, joggers, a woman walking a dog that refused to move. For the first time in years, no one needed anything from him before 8 a.m. That freedom scared him. Daniel took a drive with no destination. South, then west, past strip malls and gas stations, past a high school with banners still hanging from Friday night's game. He stopped at a small park by a river and sat on a bench, hands folded, phone face down beside him. This was the space he'd never allowed himself. No meetings to hide behind, no title to defend. Just the question he'd avoided for years. Who am I when there's nothing to prove? He thought of Naomi's face at the diner. Calm, tired, brave in a way that didn't need applause. He thought of the baby they once brought home. The weight of that tiny body. The fear. The love he hadn't known how to carry back then. He stayed on that bench until the sun climbed high enough to warm his shoulders. Across town, Naomi was sorting through boxes she'd never unpacked. Old photos, hospital bracelets, a folded note Daniel had left on the counter the day he moved out, written in a hurry, words crowded and messy. She sat on the floor and let herself remember. Not just the hurt, the good parts too. The late-night drives with the windows down. The way he used to hum without realizing it. How he'd stayed up all night assembling a crib because he wanted it perfect. She'd built armor out of memory, sharpening the pain until it felt like protection. Now she wondered if it had also been a wall. Naomi met her father for lunch at a quiet cafe downtown. Nothing fancy, just soup, sandwiches, and soft music. "You don't have to decide anything today," he told her. "Or tomorrow." "I know," she said, "but I'm tired of running from the question." He nodded. "Then ask the right one." She looked at him. "Which is?" "Not whether he deserves another chance," he said gently, "but whether you do." That stayed with her. Daniel spent the afternoon cleaning his apartment, throwing away old files, boxing up awards he used to stare at like proof of survival. He paused when he found a photo tucked into a book. Naomi, younger, laughing, caught mid-moment. He sat on the floor and held it. Then, slowly, he placed it back where it belonged. Not hidden, not on display, just honest. That evening, Naomi drove past the hospital. She hadn't planned to. The building still stood tall and white, lights glowing in the early dark. She parked across the street and sat in her car, hands tight on the wheel. 7 years ago, she'd walked out of those doors feeling invisible, unchosen. She took a breath, then another, and stayed. Daniel stood in line at a small grocery store near his place, the kind with narrow aisles and handwritten signs. The cashier asked if he wanted paper or plastic. Paper, he said. As he walked out, bags cutting into his fingers, he felt something shift. Not relief, resolve. They didn't plan to see each other that night. They just did. Naomi was leaving the hospital parking lot when she spotted him crossing the street, grocery bags swinging at his side. He didn't see her at first. She pulled over, rolled down the window. Daniel! He turned, stopped. Surprise flickered across his face, then something softer. Hey! He said. They stood there, traffic passing, city noise filling the space they didn't. I was just... She began, then stopped. I didn't expect to see you. Me neither, he replied. Silence stretched. Not awkward, just full. They walked together without saying where they were going. Past the hospital, down a side street, under streetlights that hummed faintly. I don't regret stepping down, Daniel said at last. But I regret the years I didn't step up. Naomi nodded. I don't regret leaving. I regret not believing I could come back. They stopped at a crosswalk. The light glowed red. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Naomi said, I'm afraid of hoping again. So am I, Daniel admitted. The light changed. They crossed. They ended up at a small overlook above the river. The city reflected in the water, broken and beautiful. They didn't touch. They didn't rush. They stood side by side, breathing the same air. I don't need promises, Naomi said quietly. I need consistency. Daniel nodded. I don't need forgiveness. I need to earn trust. She looked at him then, really looked, and for the first time in years, she didn't see the man who left. She saw the man who stayed standing when walking away would have been easier. They parted without a plan. No decision. Just a shared understanding that something real had shifted. That night, Daniel wrote in a notebook for the first time since college. No agenda, just truth. Naomi slept deeper than she had in weeks, her dreams no longer circling the same sharp edges. They were both still afraid, still unsure. But for the first time, fear didn't feel like a stop sign. Felt like a doorway. They'd faced the past without flinching and stood in the present without armor. But the future still waited, asking one final question. Would they choose each other when it finally mattered most? The next morning arrived quietly. No dramatic music, no rushing footsteps, just sunlight slipping through blinds and the low hum of a city waking up. Daniel woke before his alarm again. He lay still, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds outside. Cars, a distant siren, someone laughing on the sidewalk below. For years, mornings had meant pressure. Now they meant choice. He sat up and reached for his phone. No missed calls, no urgent emails. One unread message. From Naomi. Coffee today? Same place as before. No pressure. He read it twice, then typed back. Yeah, I'd like that. The cafe sat on a corner in a quiet neighborhood. The kind with chipped mugs and mismatched chairs. A place where people lingered because no one hurried them out. Naomi arrived first. She chose a table near the window and wrapped her hands around her cup, letting the warmth sink in. Outside, a man walked his kid to school, backpack bouncing, both of them arguing over something small and unimportant. Life happening anyway. Daniel walked in a few minutes later. No suit, no armor, just him. They smiled when they saw each other. Not wide, not forced, real. They talked about small things at first. Work Naomi was doing. A community project Daniel had started helping with. A neighbor who played loud music at midnight. Normal, safe. But underneath it all, something deeper waited. Eventually, Naomi set her cup down. I don't want to repeat the past, she said. Daniel nodded. Neither do I. I don't want to be chosen because it's convenient, or because someone's afraid to be alone. I'm not, he said softly. Afraid, of being alone. I've been alone. She watched his face, searching for cracks. And I don't want to be, he said. But only if it's real. There was a pause. Not uncomfortable. Intentional. Naomi leaned back slightly. My father told me something yesterday. Daniel waited. He said the question isn't whether you deserve another chance. It's whether I deserve peace. Daniel let that land. And what did you decide? He asked. She took a breath. That peace doesn't always mean distance. Sometimes it means honesty, and boundaries, and starting slow. He smiled. I'm good at slow now. That made her laugh. A soft sound. Familiar. They walked afterward. Down streets lined with old trees and front porches. Past a small park where kids chased each other, shouting, the world loud and alive. Daniel stopped near a bench. There's something I need to say, he told her. She turned toward him. I don't expect you to forget, or forgive overnight. I don't even expect you to choose me right now. He swallowed. But I'm choosing you. Today. Tomorrow. However long it takes. Even if the answer ends up being no. Naomi felt something loosen in her chest. For the first time, there was no pressure attached to hope. They sat on the bench. No touching at first. Just shoulders close enough to feel warmth. Naomi looked out at the park. I used to think strength meant leaving. Daniel nodded. I used to think it meant winning. She glanced at him. What do you think it means now? He considered that. Staying. Even when it's uncomfortable. Especially then. She smiled. Yeah. Weeks passed. Not in a rush. They met for coffee. Took walks. Sat in comfortable silence. They talked about boundaries. About fears. About the child they'd brought into the world and the weight of those early days. Some conversations were hard. Some ended with tears. But none ended with running. Daniel showed up. Consistently. To school events. To dinners with Naomi's parents. To quiet nights that didn't need plans. Naomi noticed the difference in the small things. How he listened without interrupting. How he didn't defend himself when she shared hurt. How he apologized without explanation. Trust didn't return all at once. It arrived in pieces. One evening, Naomi invited him over for dinner. Nothing fancy. Pasta. Salad. A store-bought dessert. Daniel brought wine. And flowers. He hesitated at the door, suddenly nervous. Naomi opened it and smiled. You good? She asked. He nodded. Yeah, just, this feels big. She stepped aside. It is, but it's also just dinner. That made him relax. They ate at the kitchen table. Laughed when the pasta overcooked. Shared stories they hadn't told before. Afterward, they stood at the sink, washing dishes side by side. Daniel handed her a towel. Their fingers brushed. Neither pulled away. Later, they sat on the couch. The room was quiet, lit only by a lamp. Daniel spoke first. I don't want to assume anything, he said. But I want to ask. Naomi turned toward him. Can we try again? He asked. Not the old version. A new one. She didn't answer right away. She thought about the hospital. The years alone. The strength it had taken to rebuild. She also thought about the man beside her now. Present. Changed. Real. Yes, she said. But we protect what we build. He nodded. Always. They didn't rush the kiss. When it happened, it was gentle. Careful. Full of promise instead of desperation. Naomi rested her forehead against his. We're different people now, she whispered. He smiled. That's why this might work. Months later, they stood together at a school event, watching their child perform on stage. Daniel squeezed Naomi's hand. She squeezed back. No fear. No doubt. Just pride. Life didn't become perfect. They still argued sometimes. Still had moments of uncertainty. But they faced them together. Openly. Honestly. One evening, years after that hospital night, Naomi stood in the kitchen making tea. Daniel watched her, feeling a quiet gratitude settle in his chest. Not for the second chance. For the work it took to earn it. Naomi caught him staring. What? She asked. He smiled. Just thinking how far we've come. She nodded. Yeah, we made it. And for the first time, the words felt true. They didn't erase the past. They honored it, learned from it, and chose love anyway. Proving that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is come back and stay. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.